Was the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, wrong to promise not to raise taxes? 0207 862 2222. That's the number you need. Give us a call. Last autumn, in her autumn budget, the Chancellor pledged not to raise income tax, national insurance and VAT. But now economists have warned her very clearly that she faces breaking that promise because of a £50 billion black hole in the government finances. They say higher than expected public sector borrowing and weaker economic growth has left the Chancellor with an impossible choice between cutting spending or raising taxes. Those are the choices to balance the book. And yesterday, Keir Starmer refused to rule out tax rises because this is what he said. Just have a listen.
Some of the figures that have been put out are not figures that I recognise, but the budget won't be until later in the year, and that's why we'll have the forecast then, and we'll set out our plans. What's really important is that I'm very clear about our focus, which will be on living standards and making sure that people feel better off, partly because more money is coming into their pocket in the first place through better wages, and partly because we're bearing down on costs like mortgages and other costs to everyday families.
Now, Paulette, you're a Labour MP, but just to be clear, your leader there, the Prime Minister, leader of the Labour Party, has refused to rule out raising taxes. Now, if you go to number 10, outside, the sign that's outside number 10 is First Lord of the Treasury. So he is Rachel Reeves' boss. Yeah. Now, he's refusing to rule out tax rises. So if he's refusing to, presumably it is likely to happen, which is going to upset the public, to say the very least. You must surely think that it was wrong, not in principle to raise taxes, but for Rachel Reeves to have made a promise which she can't keep.
Well, we came into power last year, and if you remember, we've had 14 years of Tory leadership. Last year, Rishi called the election 6 months before it was actually due. They'd not settled bills, things hadn't been done. We had no idea how bad it was. Well, I absolutely support Rachel. I absolutely support what she tried to do, because the three things we came in, we said we would not increase taxes, we said we would not increase national insurance, we said we would not increase VAT and tax on local people. That was because we wanted people to feel
here's the thing. You've increased national insurance, but here's the thing. Listen, people out there who may support the Labour Party will say it's all about what happened under the Conservatives. You've been in for quite some time. The reason that this is now required has got very little to do what happened in the past. It's because of what's happened since you've been in government. You turn over winter fuel payments, for example. The fact that you weren't able to get through the welfare reforms, where a number of Labour MPs, as you know, rebelled. The question is not about the tax rises. And listen, they like you because you're honest, you say it like it is. Here's a question, just let me finish. Why did she make a promise that she couldn't keep? You wouldn't want your children to do that.
But
you don't do that.
I think she believed she could keep it. When she got in, when she saw the debt, which many people argue that it was 22 billion, but when she saw that initial debt, the promises that were made, it was far more difficult to keep. I take on board the fact about the fuel allowance and the welfare bill, and I take on board the fact that Sir Keir Starmer is now saying they can't rule anything out. But what I'd like to say to you, please, if I can, is that over the next few months, what the Labour Party have done, what the Labour government has done, rather than doubling down on statements that I've always felt perhaps they shouldn't be saying, is they've now said they will look at what the situation is, they will now go into it a little bit further, and after a year in power, they will come out with the final things later on in the year.
Let's listen. But reading between the lines, you said a lot of things. That means moving forward, first of all, we are likely to get some tax rises, right? I'm going to pause whilst you think about it, because here's the thing. If she didn't know what the economic situation was before she came into power, and that's the point you've just made, and moving forward, they haven't got the growth that they expected, which lots of people predicted. The reality is that in those circumstances, unless you've got the complete picture, why would it be sensible to make a promise that there's a good chance you're not going to be able to keep? You wouldn't, for example, when you were a nurse, tell somebody they were going to be absolutely fine without knowing the complete medical picture. So that's the question. It's not about what might happen, although reading between the lines, it looks like tax rises might take place. The question is, if you were Chancellor, without knowing all the details, don't speak for Rachel Reeves, speak for yourself. Would you have made that promise?
For myself, I wouldn't have made that definite promise. I'll just put it out there, because that promise has put us in a position where I feel that we have absolutely put ourselves in a corner. But where I do think she's tried, she felt that growth was the way forward. Right. And if we could grow the economy, she could then keep the promises. With everything that has happened in the last year, the economy will grow. We are doing quite well, not as well as we'd like to be. I've heard this morning interest rates are going down again, so people will start to feel better in their pockets, mortgages and what have you. Right. But if it was myself, and you've asked me directly, I personally would not make those promises.
And a last direct question to you before we come to you, Cristo. And again, it's sort of reading between the lines of what you were saying earlier, that we're now in a situation where things have to be reconsidered. Listen, I mean, you have been very clear about your politics and who you'd like to see taxed and how. The reality is, given the economic situation we're in, taxes are going to have to go up, aren't they?
I don't know. I'm not in the government. I'm not Rachel Reeves, and I am a backbencher. I don't know what Rachel will do.
Will you be sad if they do?
I don't know what Rachel will do.
All right, there you are. We'll take your silence as... whatever Cristo wants to make of it. Cristo?
Well, I mean, they either lied through their teeth, which is wrong, or they are woefully incompetent. I'm sorry to say it, but the £22 billion black hole, which is always referred to, even the official watchdog, the Office for Budget Responsibility, said that that was a figure that was nowhere near. They put the figure at about £9.5 billion of hidden costs. What Rachel Reeves is now short of is £50 billion. She has made it arguably far, far worse. Of course, taxes will go up, and growth, the thing that she was relying on, has absolutely flatlined.
And the idea of creating growth within a year. But Paulette honestly said, if she was Chancellor, she emphasised she wouldn't have made that promise. She don't want to get into trouble with the leadership. But Ron, you're in Kent. Word to you before the break. Ron?
Yes, speaking.
Do you think she should have made that promise?
No.
Well, why not?
Because I think that she should have put taxes should have gone up because of the pandemic. Everybody's blaming this, that, and the other. We've had a pandemic for 3 years. This cost this country a fortune. If we want nice things in life, you pay for them. Just put VAT up. VAT covers everybody. Nobody gets away from it. Everybody pays it. People with the most money spend the most money. So you're taxing the wealth, if you like, in that respect.
Well, I'd say thanks, On, for your candour and your honesty. Cristo is shaking his head and Paulette is keeping very still, because what you're saying is what a lot of our callers are saying. It's not about raising taxes. Some people think it's a good thing. You certainly think it's reasonable, given the cost of the pandemic. It's about being honest and squaring with the public and not making promises that you shouldn't keep or you're not able to keep. Thanks, Ron, for calling. After the break, we're going to be taking more of your calls on this and whether the Chancellor was wrong to promise not to raise taxes. Number is 0207 862 2222. And to you, Richard, was she wrong to make that promise?
Oh, of course she was wrong. She's the biggest liar that ever been in Parliament. She lied on her CV. And all you ever heard question.
Well, just tell me. I'm going to interrupt you, but I'm not going to go to another caller. Richard, in any circumstances, when you call someone a lie, you need to back it up. You tell me what you say she's lied about, please, Richard.
Right, she lied about on her CV what she said she'd done, and also her lie about the 20 million black hole, and now it's up to 40 million black hole. You tell me if that's telling the truth.
Well, different economists have different amounts of how big the deficit is. Now, Deutsche Bank says it's about 20 billion, but what is clear is that there certainly is a hole. The question is how big that is, Richard.
Yeah, well, she's the one that started it all off. And, she couldn't even match up her own CV. What she done, was it the Bank of England or wherever she was supposed to work? That was all lies. She's nothing more than a liar.
Do you think she's a liar and she shouldn't have made those promises? I have to say, Richard, number of people calling with the same point of view. I'm going to go to the next call up in Merseyside, but after that, I'm going to come back to you, Paulette, because a big old charge. John, you're in Merseyside. Should she have made that promise? You've heard what our previous caller said, calling her a big fat porky pie teller.
I think it's very likely she should not have made that promise, and I'd just like to make a few points in connection with this whole matter. Basically, would you take over a business, and how can Labour or any political party make predictions of what they're going to do on policies without knowing what the profit and loss is of the country in effect?
Right. So you would have read the book. So you would have read the books. Is the point?
Yeah.
The point I was making.
They should have been. They should have been presented to them, because if they can't be presented in a straightforward manner, there's something wrong, something remiss with the civil service and the Treasury. I mean, I can remember years ago, I think it was in the 60s and 70s, I think it was around about every month on the television, they used to discuss the balance of payments on the news. They used to reveal the balance of payments, and they would discuss it. Now, it's a similar thing. Now, if they could do that, why can't they? So I do believe she probably did know, but was economic with the truth, put it that way. And
are you worried, John? Listen, you actually make a very good point. That what she's saying about not having seen the books is not exactly the most honest thing in the world. It's disingenuous. You wouldn't take over a basic business without looking at the profit and loss account. So her promise was, as our previous caller says, not exactly honest with the public. They would have said anything to get elected. Just a very quick one. Do you think that they are going to put up taxes? And if so, are you unhappy about that?
Yes, I think they're putting up taxes on the wrong things. They need to be more careful what they put the taxes up. I mean, at the moment, you can do what's called spread betting, a type of betting which is used particularly on stocks and shares. Right. By all sorts of people, but, a lot of wealthy people go into it, and there's no tax on that at all, and there's many other things that could be taxed that, would cause less damage to the average person's financial pocket.
Right, well, thank you very much, John. A lot of people talking about raising indirect taxation, that's VAT. Very interesting caller. Listen, I've got to go to you, Paulette, because a big old charge, right? We had a caller, two actually, but one especially saying, this is all porky pies. She lied because, as far as they're concerned, she must have known what the economic situation was. Perhaps not the minute detail, but the idea that she wasn't going to have to put up tax at some point was really being said so that the Labour Party would win an election.
But I don't believe that, because I was around before the election, and all the Labour Party had to do last year was keep quiet, because the Conservatives had made 14 years of complete shambles. When we came to the election last year, we did the manifesto, and I think, and I'm just saying what I think she did it in good faith.
But
I think they felt...
Firstly, if they only needed to keep quiet, why make a promise not to raise taxes? You make that promise because you want to win. You're prepared to say anything, including
I know,
lie.
but I genuinely, and I could be wrong, I don't know, I'm not in government, but I genuinely think when the manifesto was done, it was done in good faith. I don't think, if she thought it would have come back on her the way it has in the last year, I don't think they would have done it.
But one thing, Paulette, that you know, right? You are a bright and sensible woman. You keep it, to use an expression my goddaughters use, keep it real, right?
I do, yes.
You understand how these things work. There is a between 20 and 40 billion pound hole in the public finances. The only way to fund it is by putting up taxes. That is what's going to happen, isn't it?
I don't know. I'm going to say it to you again. I am not in government. I am not in the Treasury, and I don't know what they plan to do. What I would say to you was the promises that are made are going to, if they do put up taxes in any way, it's going to be negative for us. But the government keeps saying they will not be putting up any taxes on VAT, national insurance, or anything else.
I'll leave it in this way before we go to Richard in Milton Keynes. You wouldn't be surprised, though, if they do, right?
No.
There you are. We'll take that. Richard, Milton Keynes, our Labour MP says that wouldn't be surprised if taxes go up. That is, or would be, a breaking of a very important promise that Rachel Reeves made. What do you make of that, Richard and Milton Keynes?
Oh, I think it's absolutely abominable. To be honest with you, the question we need to be saying or thinking or asking is why in 1 year has 30 billion gone on the national debt under Labour? And the lady in the middle, she needs to answer that question, because isn't that the question we should be asking? It's 30 billion bigger.
Right. Thank you very much. And they've been in for a year, is your point. You can't carry on, as a number of our callers are saying, blaming 14 years of Tory rule. Just another call. Tony, you're in Surrey. You've heard what's been said. This promise should never have been made. And it looks like a number, I suspect this is not the only one, of Labour MPs think, look, wouldn't be surprised if taxes go up. Promise broken. What do you feel about that, Tony in Surrey?
Well, I think that all they do is give us bad news.
Right.
If they were to be running their own business, they wouldn't tell the world how bad it was or how badly it had been run for the previous 14 years.
Right.
It's just crazy. If they knew how to run a business, they wouldn't do what they've been doing.
So it's up to them to take responsibility. But Tony, also, you speak to something which is important. A number of people complaining and phoning about this. Lots of people making decisions about businesses and the economy that don't have the depth of commercial experience to understand what they're doing, or the expertise, career politicians. And a number of people are very, very upset about that. Last call before I go to you, Cristo. Peter, you're in Northamptonshire. Should she have made this promise, Rachel Reeves?
No, definitely not.
Why not?
Well, because at the end of the day, there is no way that she was not going to put up tax. Now, what she's done, she put up employment tax. There's a well-known company in this country that has just laid off 3,600 people because they cannot, and they've closed 17 shops down. At the end of the day, we cannot go on like this, because those 3,600 people are not paying tax anymore, and they'll be getting benefits, possibly, because if they can't get another job.
Well, thanks for your call, Peter. There's a number of people, again, saying, look, promise not to raise tax, but when it came to the raising of the national insurance threshold, that meant that small businesses ended up disappearing. Those jobs, of course, have gone, and that means they go out of the tax system, full stop. I'm going to give you the last word, Paulette, but I'm going to come to you, Cristo, very, very quickly to give us a response to what you've heard.
Well, I mean, if this was a company, then Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer would be fired. They have lied outright. The debt that we ended up in as a result of COVID, they supported those measures that put us into that debt. But I do just have to give you a few stats. Average wealth in Britain fell the second most in any economy in 2014. That's how 2024. That's how many people are leaving the UK. Your last caller made a really good point about national insurance. We lost more employees in April of this year, 109,000. We've lost about 25,000 each month since. We are in a dire situation in this country, and they have created it.
Well, we're going to be hearing more on other topics from Paulette. Lots of people with very strong opinions on this. Thank you for all of your calls. Listen.